Welcome to Project Alteration, Ultimate Home Couture, making the ordinary extraordinary. Hello, my name is Nicola, and I'm here to show you around in terms of what Project Alteration is and what we're hoping to achieve, and what altering your clothes is and perfecting your clothes is from an environmental point of view. Now, I have a whole list of things to say, but I'm no doubt I'm going to ramble extensively and go just a little bit off topic, more than a little bit off topic. But just first to say, what is fast and slow fashion? Why is fast fashion a problem environmentally? And what is slow fashion, and how can that help us? So I have so much to say about this, but I'm going to try and kind of like cut it to the chase. All right, cut to the chase. This, by the way, is Pierre, a bonsai. I'm bonsai sitting. Right. Hello. Pierre says hi. Right. So first of all, what is fast fashion? So say, for example, you go into Primark one week and you find a dress that you really like, but you don't buy it. Now, if you went into Primark, it's okay. Relax. We're human. Okay, it's okay. Right? We don't occupy the perfect higher ground. We're here in an evolutionary process of mess and mistake. We are all in a petrol and plastics economy, and we are trying to find our way through it and to find new ways. All right. So you go into Primark and you find a dress that you like. You go back the following week and you can't find it anymore, but you find 5 others. All right. That is fast fashion. Right, what is happening then is that there is an incredibly rapid turnover of cheap, affordable fashion, all right? And what that does is, what it means is that there's a high production level of those garments, clearly, all right? What that does is, it's intensive fashion production has various byproducts environmentally. The first one is that there are a lot of dyes that tend to be toxic and that go into the water supply. Firstly, there is a lot of water wastage through this excessive production of clothes, this intensive production of clothes. And last of all, there is the issue of wastage and landfill, is that through excess, a lot of the stuff is just filled into landfill and not even used, okay? So that's firstly, that is what fast fashion is. So what we want to do as consumers and as wearers of clothes, as non-naked people, what we want to do is we want to slow down our consumption of fast fashion in terms of our contribution to the environment. And we want to engage in sophisticating and re-owning and redefining what we already have, okay? And I like to think of the environmental process and the environmental movement in terms of sophistication, not denial. All right, so what happens is, in this process of survival, which is ultimately the environmental movement, that process of survival becomes an evolutionary one and a sophisticating one. So I love to think of this idea that basically Project Alteration, Ultimate Home Couture, making the ordinary extraordinary, is that we slow everything down and we become more conscious consumers, and we become more conscious owners. And what that does is it gives us an opportunity to think about what we own, why we own it, how we enjoy it. It is not a crime. Breaking news, everybody. It is not a crime to enjoy the material world. It is not a crime to enjoy clothes. And by the way, it is certainly not a crime to love to dress up. I firmly believe that dressing up is one of the great sacred rites of passage of humanity. I think it has enormous symbolic and therapeutic value, and I don't think it's a bad thing, and I think it's a good thing, and I think that we can healthily embrace it, and it is not necessarily some desperately narcissistic disorder. I think actually, ironically, that the intense consumption of clothes doesn't necessarily come from a disordered sort of narcissism. I think a lot of the time it comes actually from the very opposite. I think, and clearly this is a trope, a psychoanalytic trope that I'm not going to play my violin about right now because I'm strictly unqualified. That never stopped me. I am the ultimate armchair expert. But the idea of constant consuming is a very interesting one, because what it does is it's almost like saying that whatever you have in your cupboard is never enough. Okay, it is never enough. All right, I have a female friend, beloved, hello girl, all right, who is much loved and has a compulsive relationship with the shops. And a lot of what goes on is when he doesn't text her back, she buys another dress, okay? And actually sort of stopping that whole process and bringing that process into consciousness is like, girl, you don't need a new dress. you need a man you can trust. Okay, so now that is a whole nother debate, and that is a whole nother, clearly a heteronormative stance. Please forgive me. You need a human you can trust. You need to stop like seeking to fill the void with endless more stuff. All right, let's sophisticate, let's evolve what we have, let's look at what we have. And this Project Alteration, is about really kind of stopping, keeping still, and looking at what that is to transform what you already have from the ordinary into the extraordinary. I also just want to say, I think like on a personal level, I'm just a natural born trash queen. All right, I don't think I'm a worthy soul. I'm a recovering shopaholic, and I remember vividly those times in my late 20s, I think, when I loved to shop. Now I can't stand it. It drives me frenzied. Like, it literally drives me frenzied. I resent it profoundly. I resent the waste of time. I resent the endless circling. I can't stand any of it. I resent the waste of time immensely. But in my late 20s, I had a habit. Oh, I had a habit. And actually, when I kind of looked at that habit, I looked at what it was, and I actually think that part of that whole thing of shopping and the seeking and the looking for something beautiful and to find something beautiful was not only to try and make myself attractive, clearly, but it was it was actually an aesthetic drive. It was an aesthetic drive, and on some level I kind of twigged, I am shopping because I want to satisfy an aesthetic drive. And the aesthetic drive, the desire to make things beautiful, is part of a creative drive. And when I kind of twigged that, I realized, like, I'm shopping because I'm actually frustrated creatively. And I think it's really interesting when we there's something very worthy in the aesthetic drive, and sometimes we try and satisfy it through ways that are not necessarily all that satisfying. So I want to say a few provisos here. We can't step out of capitalism entirely. What we can do is we can refine and we can transform capitalism as a consumer. We can do our bit in terms of understanding cultural tropes of environmental change. And one of them is to slow down consumption. And one of them as well is to look at what you own and to refine what you own. And I love the idea of, Project Alteration, Ultimate Home Couture, making the ordinary extraordinary. That is the idea here. Just in terms of my background, I've been making and designing stuff since I was like this big. So that's kind of my background. I can make things from scratch. I design stuff from scratch, but I'm very much kind of went through this whole process myself at home, where I kind of looked into my cupboard and I was like, I hate all of this. I don't want to wear any of this. All right. And I did throw a lot of stuff away, which went to charity. Hopefully somebody else can find a good use for that. Hopefully it doesn't land up in landfill. Hopefully it can get repurposed elsewhere. I wanted to kind of look at this idea. I wanted to model this whole thing of Project Alteration across the board here, and look at all of the different skills. Now, what I did is I actually, on a personal level, because I like to experiment at home, home is the experimentation chamber, is I basically turfed everything out, and I looked through everything and I said, right, okay, what I want, what I hate, what I actually like wearing, and I kind of pared down my wardrobe. I got rid of about two-thirds of it, and it actually feels so much better. It feels like everything that I own now is something that I really love, not something that I bought kind of from some misguided sense of I don't know what it was, sort of consumptive or some consumerist sort of drive or whatever it is. And not to say I am not a consumer, because I am. It's about changing our consumption habits. All right, I am a consumer. Nobody here, nobody on this planet occupies a perfect higher ground. Okay, we are all in a state of evolution. We're a state of experimentation. So I just want to preface this. I know I'm rambling on. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to quickly talk about this. This is the slightly more sort of philosophical kind of ranty preface to the videos that I'm going to make. And there are 4 basic skills when it comes to altering your clothes. You make things wider, you make them slimmer, you make them shorter, and you make them longer. You can also embellish what you have. All right, you embellish what you have. And there you can do some stuff which is just like really lovely. And again, you take stuff and stuff that was kind of iffy, and you turn it into stuff that you really, really love. And by the way, I'm a person who believes in responsible sequin ownership. You own them, you wear them. That means maybe Thursday morning. Okay, so I fully believe in the therapeutic power of dressing up. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think there are far worse things that we can do, and I think it has huge ceremonial power, so go for it. Dressing up is good. All right, there are worse things that you can do. There's this kind of reverse narcissism of being anti-dressing up, which you can't be hacked with whatsoever. So I just wanted to quickly talk you through some of my main exemplars here of these various skills that I did. Pierre is kind of in the way. He can be a little bit, I don't want to diss him, but he can be a bit attention seeking. But anyhow, right. So what I want to talk to you here is the first skill, which is really widening things. So I had a coat here, which I love. It's an embroidered coat. I'm very fond, very, very fond. But I just didn't feel that it was wide enough and for winter. And what you want to do in winter is you want to have a whole lot of different layers of things. You might have another coat underneath. You might have a jumper. It's kind of like, for those who want to wear a tight coat, that's all good, but like I'm freezing and I'm on a bus, all right? So what I did here, and I don't know whether you can see this, is I basically slit it down the side and put in panels. In the videos that I've got coming up, I'm going to talk about how to buy a sewing machine, what you need from an entry-level beginner's sewing machine, and secondly, how to make a dress bigger. I'm going to do a demonstration for that as well. And I've got somebody else's video who put together an amazing darning show. Beloved Bob, hello. Secondly, for this one, again, I wanted to make it bigger. And again, no comments from the Peanut Gallery. I wanted to make it bigger because I like my coats bigger. So what I did is I bought a very, very similar fabric and I fitted in a panel down the side. By the way, as well, obviously in terms of slow fashion, one of the first things that you can do is go shopping in the back of your wardrobe, do charity shopping so that you buy what is already made and then alter what you have. So as you see there, you see an entire panel down the side. What I also happened to do is I happened to decide to embellish it. I wanted it to have kind of like spider cobwebs on it. So I embroidered some cobwebs on it. Now I've always wanted a big kind of like fisherman's sort of like yellow raincoat. So I bought this, but of course it hadn't by nowhere near, and I couldn't find one that had the biggest sort of size on it. So I put these panels down the side and that got me kind of perfectly what I wanted. Right, this one as well, I wanted this huge. So basically what I did here again is I put panel down the side. I put this kind of, this fleecy stuff down the side, and instead of just turfing out the coat, I kept it and I turned it into my perfect coat. Love that coat. Right, so those are the processes of expansion. All right, obviously the processes of reduction are very much the same. You basically just go down the sides. We'll get to that in a moment. We'll get to that in another video. Here I wanted to talk a little bit about embroidery. I decided that New York as it stood was not quite enough, certainly not quite enough for moi, so I embroidered that because I thought it was a real kind of like a sort of a NAFPIS take on the trope of New York. This again is another example of I wanted it huge, so I put in panels down the side. I will show you how to do that soon in another video. This one I bought the basic structure. I love a kaftan. Oh, I do. Right, and I bought the basic structure, this tie-dyed stuff, but I didn't like the fact that it wasn't big enough, so I put all these extra panels on the side, which makes it much more vast and much more, you know, just had a bit of swish to it, basically. This one here, I took this and I'd really like a blossom, so I embellished this lot here. This was a bit intensive. I am a fan of hand sewing, which is all a bit 14th century, but there are ways around it. A lot of the stuff is iron-on, and there are ways to do it. So that's a decaled jacket. This one as well, I wanted to get one of these online. They cost like 80 quid. It was absolutely ridiculous not having it, so I decaled it myself, and I'm very fond of that little number. The same thing here, all for a blossom. In for a blossom, in for a pound. Okay, there we go. Some more blossoms. Now I want to show you some of the stuff which is kind of deeper and the more sort of advanced stuff to do with actually redesigning clothes and recreating clothes. This one here was a long dress and it had no basic shape. So what I did is I put in this thing here, and I put in the ribbon, and I basically sort of messed it up a bit and put in some slits. This one here, I wanted to change the sleeves. I changed them up. I raised them up, refitted them. Kind of, it's all a bit pre-Raphaelite and a bit Bo Peep, so I'll have to see about that one. Here, this one I went for some heavy embellishment. I decided to go all shell with that one. There we go. Right. And then here on my machine, I do have an embroidery function of which I am more than profoundly fond. So this one here, I re-sewed up a sort of a kaftani type thing and embroidered, close up embroider. Oh, look at the blossoms. Oh, embroidery, love embroidery. More embroidery, more embellishment. Woohoo! The birds of spring. This one, again, I quite like this. It's quite kind of like, I'm not sure if this is like altogether like appropriate, but this is definitely sort of like into the Kirov, you know what I'm saying? It's definitely like plie, some kind of crossover frock with blooms on. Again, something with a spot of a bloom on, some embellishment. Oh, and this one I just couldn't resist. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's Totes Malibu. This one is Totes Malibu. And this one here is slightly more kind of advanced. So what I did is I had this black satin kind of kaftani frock, which was really all just a bit too oil barren for my liking. So I chopped off the sleeves, made them shorter, took the frill there, took the ends of the sleeves, turned them into a front frill. I wanted something infinitely more baroque, and shaped the frock. So it's kind of a whole different vibe completely. And lastly, but not leastly, I wanted to bring on the birds. So there you go. There's some examples of some birds. All right. So again, all right, what people tend to do in the environmental movements, they tend to go for purism. And they tend to say that it's got to be all or nothing, and we've got to occupy the perfect higher ground. I don't have access to the perfect higher ground, breaking news. And nor, quite frankly, do I think anybody does, unless you live in a pre-industrial society and you've taken you and yours up a tree, and you live there in pre-industrial, non-capitalist perfection, and you pat yourself on the back and you do nothing for the world other than for your own sense of perfection. All right, that's fantastic. I don't think it's the real world, and I don't think it's the real world that most people live in. More power to you, not for me. So in terms of like, yes, I have consumed. Yes, I do consume, but something is better than nothing. And we want to look at cultural tropes that are readily and easily accessible to alter our concepts of ownership, so that we slow down our consumption and we slow down our pressure on the environment through fast fashion. And we look to have ready ways to actually change what we own, not to make it worthy and perfect, not to turn ourselves into unadorned specimens of worthiness, but to turn ourselves into more sophisticated models of ownership, more sophisticated, more long-standing, more articulate, more endeared, more profound, more enjoyed models of ownership. I don't think that worthiness sells. I do think that fun does. And I think that in terms of the environmental movement, I think it's helpful to think of how can we make things better? How can we have more through having less, as opposed to having less through having less? And one of the ways to do that is to slow down our consumption, to think about why we constantly shop, to think about what we're looking for when we constantly shop, and to think that actually nirvana might be in the back of your cupboard. And that includes dressing up. It includes turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. And it includes having a riot of fun. And to that end, I say thank you for listening to Putting Up with Pierre and his attention-seeking antics. I say thank you for listening to this kind of tangentially rambling, philosophical, semi-practical diatribe, and to say that look forward to more videos regarding some of the key skills with alteration. And I will be, once lockdown, I was just about to start just pre-lockdown, but once lockdown surfaces, I will be doing a monthly workshop in South London, which I will film so that I can share more and more of these skills. The skills are very simple once you know how to use them. I have taught design before, and let me say it's an extraordinary experience of teaching people how to. I believe that everybody has a creative drive inside themselves. I think it's kind of primordial. I think it's like mud and water and 3-year-olds. And I think that to ignite that is wonderful. And I think if we can create a culture where we look to re-own what we already own, we will be tickety-boo and closer to plain sailing. Peace, love. Take care.